Hey guys, what's up? It's Karl, and we've got a very heavy one in this studio today, and it's actually the first 4K projector that we're taking a look at in 2021. It is the LG HU810P 4K projector, and this thing gets an image all the way up to 300 inches at full 4K glory. And as many of you know, I am huge into the projector space. I'd rather have something like this over that 100-inch mark as opposed to a traditional TV, whether that be an OLED, QLED, RLED. I'm willing to sacrifice that image quality you get with an actual panel for having something larger, because once you go big, it is very hard to go back. So we'll quickly take this out of the box. We'll kind of show off some highlights and of course, get this guy set up. And inside you're getting the standard user manuals, warranty info, LG's Magic Remote, which is still one of my favorites across any TV manufacturer, of course the power cable, and the actual projector itself, which you can see right here. It looks so minimal, so clean. It's essentially a large white box. I think it fits perfectly into this studio. And on the bottom, you've just got some venting and some little kickstands on both sides to help with the adjusting. So this is a long throw projector. It's meant to live further away from the wall that you're trying to watch content on. If you've seen any of my stuff, I do have short throw projectors, which of course the name implies lives right next to the wall. You can either have this living away from your couch somewhere behind, or if you want to go super extreme, you can have this ceiling mounted. But depending on the overall configuration of your room, you'll have to find the sweet spot of where to put this. And most importantly, pricing wise, this comes in right under the $3,000 mark. And that is so much value for what you're actually getting. The price of projectors has come down so much in the past couple of years. If you had something with similar specs 2 years ago, this would easily cost over the $10,000 mark. So spec-wise, you can kind of see that through the ports on the back. So I mentioned at the beginning, 4K 3840 by 2160 all the way up to 300 inches. This is easily the largest projector that I've had the chance to look at. You've got 3 HDMI inputs, 2 USB ports, a optical digital, Ethernet port, and lastly, you've got the little toggle selector in case you lose the remote or just want to use this on the unit instead. On the left-hand side, you've got the lens and focus adjuster, and I'm gonna set this up back at my apartment for my first setup, as that's where I typically watch TV. That's where I set up all my projectors. So let's do a little movie magic. I will carry this thing back there, even though it's a bit heavy, and we will see you guys there. Okay, so we're back at my place now, and you can see we're in my makeshift cinema room. This is where I watch most of my content, and I do already have a 100-inch projector screen, and since this is a pretty temporary build, I've currently got it living behind my couch this way, and if I was looking to have this as more of a longer-term solution, or if you're looking to grab it for yourself, definitely consider having it hanging from the ceiling somewhere just so it's out of the way. So setup is super simple. It actually mimics most of LG's TV lineup. As long as you have enough space, you've got the dials underneath the lens, both for focus and for zoom. Like I mentioned, you've got the 2 little legs to adjust tilt, and you also have this little knob on the left-hand side to direct the angle which way the projector is pointing. So that will really depend on where you end up mounting it, whether it's on a table like me. So just make sure to fiddle around with those to get the perfect straight image wherever you are displaying or projecting your image. You also have a keystone function inside the menu system to ensure everything is nice and straight. And in terms of its performance, I have been so impressed with this little unit. It actually mimics, or maybe even beats out, my $10,000 short throw projector that you see. And for the spec heads, it's got 8.3 megapixels in 4K. It covers 97% of the DCI-P3 color space. It is a dual laser projector, so both red and blue. It's got a 2,000,000 to 1 contrast ratio, and even in a place like this, you can see off to this side, I am covered in floor-to-ceiling windows, so I get a ton of natural light. Even watching this during the day, I still get some really decent quality. So it actually has 2 different modes, both a bright room mode, which we're kind of set to now, so both the white and black levels rise up together. And for nighttime, it has a dark room mode, or if you're building at your home cinema, you probably have blackout blinds. It's probably in a dark room anyways. And that's where you'll get the deepest black levels and of course the best sort of performance. And typically most of my content revolves around streaming services, so both Disney Plus as well as Prime Video. It's got all of the apps built in using WebOS 5.0, and like I mentioned, if you've used any of LG's TV lineup in the past, it's very similar. Very intuitive menu system. You've got the great Magic Remote to select what you want to watch. And depending on what you're watching, say it's the latest Marvel movie, The Mandalorian, say anything from National Geographic, it has HDR Pro built in. And that will cover most of the high dynamic range specifications, and that includes HDR10, dynamic tone mapping, HLG, etc. And maybe the only recommendation that I would make if you are grabbing this projector, it does have a built-in speaker so you can use it out of the box, but because it lives behind you or even somewhere close to the ceiling, it isn't really the greatest sound output. So pair it with an external speaker like a soundbar, or you can go all the way budget and hook it up to something as simple as a Bluetooth speaker. But yeah, like I mentioned, super impressed with its performance even on bright days like today. And maybe the only downside, I am a bit capped here in my condo because I am limited to that 100-inch mark because I already have an existing projector screen. So if you want to get a larger space or a larger screen size, you just have to have a larger wall. That's why we're gonna head back to the studio where I have the massive wall to fully unlock its potential and hopefully get 300 inches. Let's head back there now. And now that we're back in the studio, the second area which I've set up the projector is actually the white wall behind me. And this is a wall that I like to set up anything over that 100-inch mark because it's just a basic white wall and it doesn't have any of that reflective surface that, say, projector screens may have. I would definitely suggest, if you're doing something similar, to watch your content mostly at night. Because of the nature of projectors, they naturally don't get as light as traditional LED, LCD panels. This does get up to 2700 lumens, like I mentioned, but watching content at night is probably your best bet. You can still see stuff during the day, but the experience just isn't as good. So if you do want to watch during the day, probably turn off all the lights. If you had blackout blinds, I'd probably suggest that as well. But overall, this has just been a solid upgrade to the 4K projector screen. The price of this, I'm still kind of blown away. Could not get remotely close to this a couple of years ago. The fact that it's still technically pretty portable, I know that it's a bit heavy, and if you do decide to mount it on the ceiling, it'll probably stay put, but the image quality you get is kind of unrivaled. The size, of course, is something completely unmatchable. I think the largest 100-inch consumer TVs are in that $20,000 mark. Absolutely ridiculous. So the value is definitely here if you want that large screen size. And the fact that it's relatively attainable for a half decent price. I mean, if you compare that $3,000, I'll show some examples of OLEDs, of LCD panels. You're still only getting around the 65 to 80 inch mark if you're lucky. And in the end, you're left with a choice of 300 inches or 65. I think a lot of you know which option that I would go for. Excited to hear your thoughts though down below in the comments what you think of LG's new 4K projector. I think my next sensible upgrade, I'd try to get a projector screen to accommodate this projector size. So if you know of any, leave them down below. I'm sure I'll try to look them up over on Amazon, and I will catch the rest of you hopefully with a 300-inch projector screen next time in one of my next videos. Peace.